I am so excited to talk to Janice Miles today, who'll talk to us about the natural solutions for managing ADD symptoms. Let me introduce her briefly before I bring her on. Janice Miles Service is a registered dietitian and nutritionist at a state psychiatric center with specialized training in the areas of mental health and addiction recovery. Janice is also a member of the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research and is dedicated to promoting and bringing awareness to all regarding the relationship between the importance of nutrition and brain health. Much of her experiences and inspirations have sprung up from her work with those in recovery at the Addiction Treatment Center and her personal journey with her son, who was given the label of ADHD with oppositional defiance disorder. Janice witnessed firsthand how food and whole food-based supplementation completely changed the trajectory of her son's life, who is now a college-bound high school graduate with plans to wrestle at the collegiate level. Janice has recently launched a small private practice helping young high school athletes diagnosed with ADD, ADHD to improve focus and athletic performance. Hi, Janice. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Mental Health Break podcast.
Thank you for having me, Doctor.
Yeah, it's wonderful to speak to you. And I did a little brief introduction about you before we got started. But can you tell me a little bit more about your background as a registered dietitian and nutritionist, and then what got you interested in the field?
So yes, I'm a registered dietitian that currently works in a state-run mental health facility. I'm responsible for patients in the chronic inpatient wards as well as the addiction treatment center. Nutrition became an interest to me. It's actually a second career when I realized how it helped me in terms of weight. And I also had a natural interest in biochemistry, and nutrition just seemed to be that a natural progression. I later became interested in nutrition and mental health, which actually wasn't taught when I was attending school or learning about nutrition in school. It was my own personal experience with my own son, my ADHD son. And being very hesitant about medication, he was actually diagnosed at age 11, but I saw symptoms early on in life, earlier than at his age of diagnosis. And again, hesitant, like a lot of parents, about medication. And I remember when he was diagnosed by the psychiatrist, I was given a prescription for the Daytrana patch. When he had the year that he was diagnosed at age 11, it was May, so just before school ended, and the psychiatrist suggested that I wait until the school year started again before filling the prescription. So I had May to September to think about whether or not I wanted to use medication. And I remember speaking to a colleague who said to me, Janice, I don't want to interfere, but you're a registered dietitian. What are you doing, even considering this? So given my background in nutrition and biochemistry, I had to go back to the drawing board and go back to my nutritional biochemistry textbooks to see, have a look and see what really could be done or how nutrition could be of benefit. We moved on. I ended up not implementing the Daytrana patch and started out using amino acids and a supplement here and there. And yes, I had some changes, but nothing was consistent. And I did not get a consistency in his behavior or his focus, his moods, until I took a more comprehensive approach. That's where the brain-gut connection, I started to learn about the brain-gut connection and functional medicine, sort of not treating symptoms, even with herbs or supplements, but getting to the root of the issue. And I found that the underlying issue for ADHD or any mental health disorder starts probably in the gut-brain axis. We know now that there's a interplay between the gut and the brain. The gut is often referred to as the second brain because it has its own set of neurons and nervous system, the enteral nervous system, and that there's a bidirectional communication between the gut, the microbes, which are the bacteria, the viruses, and the fungi that live together when living together in harmony, communicate with the brain. When that balance is disrupted, whether it be from a nutrient deficiency, poor diet, some sort of an infection, that interplay between or communication between the brain and the gut gets disrupted. And then you have symptoms like depression, possibly, anxiety, impulsivity, and also when the gut is disrupted, often that coincides with a disruption in blood sugars. When my son was diagnosed, his lab showed a normal A1C. And like if I step back, after meeting with the doctor who prescribed the Daytrana patch, I decided that I needed to find somebody who was a little bit more on the same page as me when it came to nutritionally. And I did find somebody who did a comprehensive nutrition panel, a psychiatrist who did a comprehensive nutrition panel.
I know your son's diagnosis with ADD and opposition and defiance disorder inspired your current business to work with teens, but you were talking a little bit about him getting diagnosed and looking for somebody that was on the same page as you. Can you tell me a little bit more about his symptoms that ultimately led to the diagnosis, and then what are the steps that you ended up taking to help him do better?
Okay. The symptoms were the phone calls from the school about the constant chatting in school, that he was disruptive in class. He actually had been suspended a couple times from school because of the oppositional defiance, basically. And so my desperation to help my son who was suffering and getting more and more depressed because he felt like he was disliked. And again, just trying in my desperation, I had to do something differently. And I knew that medication was never going to be the answer. And the reason I knew that is working in the mental health field myself and meeting with the addicts, my patients at the Addiction Treatment Center who were on those stimulants years before, who were on the Adderalls, who were on the Ritalin. And here they are in the Addiction Treatment Center. So I didn't want that to be my son's demise. Again, in my desperation, I tried to find a psychiatrist who was sort of on the same page. And I did. And he, at the time, ordered a whole host of tests for my son. And he also gave me a supplement, which was a supplement. It was a micronutrient supplement that had a whole host of, it was a multivitamin on steroids, a whole host of nutrients and minerals and vitamins and cofactors. And it did actually work in some regards, but it was, I don't know, maybe 30 pills a day. And it was a little expensive. And going back to the labs that he took, he did a B vitamin status, he did the A1C, and he did a fasting insulin. Fasting insulin is not a lab that a lot of doctors do. You actually have to fight for that. And that is a clearer indicator of a blood sugar imbalance. And it's often one of the last things that doctors check. My son's fasting insulin was elevated. His A1C was normal, but high normal. And I remember because he actually was suspended from school. He was actually going to be suspended for a year. Thankfully, we were able to turn it around when he was in the 7th grade. The psychiatric nurse practitioner, again, wanted to put him on Ritalin. And I said, no, but we have to look at the labs, look at his A1C, and look at his fasting insulin. And she at the time said, oh, no, that doesn't matter. I said, no, let's address this first. And then if we don't get any resolve, then we'll move on to medication. And that's what I did. I started working on his blood sugar balance. And that meant working on, first of all, we stopped doing school lunch because I noticed when it was pizza, especially the pizza and the chocolate milk day, was the day that I got the most phone calls. And so we started he started bringing his own lunch and also started having more snacks that sat in the nurse's office. And also he had an IEP. The breaks for snacks were written into the IEP so that he was to have something to make sure that he was having something every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day. He's an athlete. So, and thankfully, I had a great school nurse who helped me out with this situation, as well as, somewhere it was usually a hot lunch, somewhere to heat his lunch up when needed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. A lot of people don't make the connection between school lunches and all the sugary processed foods that their kids are eating and their behavior at school. I mean, I know I directly noticed that with my daughter. Whenever she would have a candy bar or any junk food, she would be bouncing off the walls and she would be more defiant. She would be more disrespectful. And I would beg people, please don't give her
Mm-hmm.
this stuff because it made such a huge difference. And I'm glad you noticed
Yes,
that
it
because
does
a lot of
absolutely.
so you did mention the connection between the food, nutrition, and then it affecting his behavior and his ability to focus. So what changes, what are the specific snacks and foods that you implemented to make sure that he eats besides, like you cut out the pizza and the chocolate milk. So what was he eating for breakfast? What was he eating for his snacks? And then what about after school? Did you change that as well to make sure he had enough brain power to finish his
Yes.
homework?
Yes. So for breakfast, I made sure he had a high source. He has to have a good source of protein, whether it be eggs, turkey sausages, and he's very picky. These kids are very picky. I noticed with these ADHD type kids. So yes, it was something that was very high protein. So I tell him, and actually now he's an athlete, 25 to 30 grams of protein, along with fiber from fruits and vegetables, as well as your healthy fats. So from avocados, from salmon and shrimp, wild caught, and especially the wild caught animals, and whether it be fish or other animal, livestock, whether it be beef, whether it be chicken, animals that are raised in a healthy environment, as well as the fruits and vegetables, and not the sugary fruits and vegetables. He never has, I always tell him, no fruits on an empty stomach, or no carbs on an empty stomach. So it would be, let me go back, it would be, a high protein breakfast along with fiber, as well as healthy fats, whether it's cooking with the fat or adding the fat. We cut out cereal in the morning. And, which was a little bit of a struggle because we were so used to using boxed cereals. And then he would go to school and try to sneak and have cereals and bagels. But then I knew when I started to get the complaint, that, but he had breakfast. Why is he having an issue? And then the lunch was the same thing. It was something that had high protein, vegetables, and maybe a little bit of rice or a little bit of potatoes. But the focal point was the protein, because these kids, one of the issues with these kids is the lower dopamine levels and the lower serotonin levels. So they need to be able to access the protein that's going to be more bioavailable, and that's going to be from your animal products. Getting it from beans and, number one, the fiber doesn't make it as bioavailable. So they need something that they can access quickly. So yes, so then he would have that. And for after school, it was the same thing. If he had practice in between meals, so when he would go down to the nurse's office, in between meals, we would do something like a low sugar yogurt. And he loves Chobani, low sugar. They have a low sugar line. I think it's called the Hint of. He loves that. And the Chobani Complete is a new line. It's a drinkable line. They have both the yogurt that you can scoop with a spoon, as well as the drinkable line that has about 25 grams of protein and fiber that he loves, and he'll do in between sports, as well as during his day at school when he was in high school. So he would go down to the office. He would have breakfast from home. Then he would have a snack about 2 hours after getting to school. Then he would have his lunch. And then about 2 hours after lunch, he would have another snack. And then at home, if he was going to do sports, he would have another snack before. And it was very important for him to have a snack after, because when you exercise, the blood sugars do drop lower. In order to recover both the blood sugars as well as for muscle recovery, you need something after. I used to tell him within 30 minutes of his practice or match or whatever it is.
I like that you removed the cereals. We had to do the same thing. And now I tell my patients, if you're going to have cereal, have it as dessert, because that is not breakfast. It's going to spike up your blood sugar. And I like that you're making that connection between blood sugar and ADD, because a lot of people also don't make that connection, especially with the dopamine levels. We do need that protein to perk up that frontal part of the brain. And
That's
so
right.
increasing the protein throughout, I say they should have, even with their snacks, a good fat, a good protein, and a good carb, right? So that would be
Absolutely.
like hummus
So
and
I always say, yeah. I always say protein, fiber, and fats every 2 to 3 hours. So whether it be your snack or your
right.
meal, protein, fiber, and fat.
I like that, the fiber aspect of it, instead of the carbs, because a lot of people will just have a lot of bread and pastas
Right.
instead of having like the carrots and the vegetables, which are full of fiber. So that'll give you the fiber, as well
That's
as
right.
the fat, and so you can get the fat and the protein as well and add that. So some snack ideas: hummus with vegetables, apples with almond butter, peanut butter. Right? Those
Right.
have the fats.
Those have the fats, but I find too, again, with my son, for instance, when he has a wrestling match, the almonds and so on do have the protein, but not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to be like a yogurt that, as I say, that has that 25 grams. Or sometimes we did cold cuts, healthy. Try to find the healthier cold cuts for that snack. We actually, when I was in my initial stages of the journey as well, and when I discovered that blood sugar was an issue too, there's a company called UCAN. They developed I guess it's called a super starch that was originally intended for a child whose blood sugars would dip dangerously low at bedtime overnight. So they developed this product specifically for this child, but they realized that it could be used that athletes, they broadened their market to include everybody. And it was the UCAN shakes, number one, that helped me confirm that this child was having a blood sugar issue, because he would be off the walls, and as soon as he had a shake, within moments his behavior would turn around. So we use that. He's wrestling and preparing for college, so we use that a lot to help him in between, because the super starch, it bypasses the gut and it doesn't cause the crashes. And in a sport like wrestling or marathon running, there's the idea of carb loading, which actually can hurt somebody that has ADHD or ADD. I actually had a young client who's a basketball player, and his father is very much involved and was doing the carb loading, but the child was crashing during school day and not able to focus. And when they took him to the psychiatrist/psychologist, Ritalin was recommended. And they didn't want to do that. So that's when they contacted me. And, I recommended the UCAN shakes and some other things, and doing the snacking throughout the day, making sure he's, getting that protein. And the father told me that he did his first basketball dunk, and never done that. And he's been playing basketball for a little while. Blood sugar is just so important.
Right. The crash that you mentioned, a lot of kids, they have the cereal for breakfast. They're crashing by 10 in the morning, and then they eat the school lunch, and then they're crashing in the afternoon. They come home, they eat the chips and the cookies, and they're crashing.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of energy for that frontal lobe to focus on school and get the
That's
work
correct.
done, right?
That's correct. Absolutely. Yeah, the prefrontal lobe cortex and blood sugar. There's an article that I often read to my addicts, written by somebody who was sort of my mentor, basically talking about decision making and the importance of optimal blood sugars for decision making. And when the blood sugars are not at optimal levels, the dopamine levels take a nosedive, as well as the mitochondria in the neurons start to, have altered function. So they're not as cells are not as, providing the power and the energy to the brain that it needs.
And it comes down to that. It's fuel for the brain. We don't
Yes,
realize how much energy it needs, and we need to feed our brain the energy that it needs. We're not going to take our car and give it cheap gas or fill
that's
it with
right.
things that are not gas, right? We give it the whatever fuel it needs to run, and our brain is no different. We need to give it the proper fuel. These instant sugars and instant carbs that burn really quickly is not enough to sustain our brain to function
That's right.
for long periods, right?
Absolutely. And I always say to especially on his game days, or the game week, tournament week, make sure you're fueling,
Mm-hmm.
fueling fueling your day, fueling for the match, fueling for, life.
Right.
He just got a job as a dog handler, and he realizes, oh, wow, I need to be able to focus on these dogs. So I need to have optimal energy and brain function. My daughter, who is finishing up a degree in biology with a minor in psychology, she's taking a child psychology class. She's called me, Mom, I'm working on this project with this professor who claims that diet doesn't work for ADHD or ADD. And actually she got marks, deductions from her grade because she didn't see medication as an intervention. So I said, we'll have to, when your grades are all confirmed, we'll have to send her some research so that for her next class.
There is a lot of controversy, and a lot of people get very defensive and very angry, professionals in the field, even when you suggest that there are other solutions to mental illness or mental well-being besides pharmaceuticals. And I know that it's a controversial subject, but I'm of the belief that try everything natural first. Try the lifestyle changes, try the diet, try the exercise, try healing your gut. And then if all of that doesn't work, then you can consider medication. But the sad truth is a lot of people want a quick fix. They want something that's gives them instant results with very little effort and change on their part. And so that will lead to long-term issues.
That's the unfortunate thing that we've also been socialized to believe there's a pill for your ill. I know somebody right now who has been sick since he was 11 years old. He's 41 now and still lays on his mom's couch, ordering sushi and ordering fast foods and wondering why he can't get up off the couch. And his psychologist will tell his mom 5% of it is food, the rest is medication. And I said, why, maybe we should reverse that. Maybe it's the 5% factor that is going to be beneficial, that's going to actually help pull him off the couch.
Right. Did you say there's a pill for every ill?
Yeah, a pill for your ill. That's what we've been socialized to believe.
And doing the other work is harder. It takes longer. It does take some effort on your part, but the results are so much better if people actually commit to that, the effort that it requires.
So amazing, because so I'll tell you, my son was suspended. He was on that list, that bad boy list, and he left school being so respected. We were talking about this the other day. You were so respected by not only his peers, but his teachers. And I said, what a tragedy it would have been just to do the quick fix, the medication, and not really correct what was going on underneath.
I had the same thing. I had a patient that was on the way to being in the emotionally disabled classroom. She was getting suspended constantly. She was considered oppositional because she refused to do the work. And when we started implementing a lifestyle change, took the sugar, she was so addicted to sugar, took the sugar out of her diet, cleaned up her diet, and she committed to eating really healthy foods. By the end of it, not only was she getting the respect of her teacher, and her teacher was asking, what are you doing so I can tell other parents? But she was also recommended for Student of the Month. And that was such a proud moment because the family had no idea that they were contributing to her problems unwillingly. I mean, if they knew, like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better, right? If they knew that what they were doing was making their child sick, they would have intervened a long time ago. But a lot of times people don't know what's going on. Just like you didn't even realize that what you were probably doing was contributing to your son's illness by allowing him to eat the school lunches, by not even paying attention to the blood sugar issues. Once you figured that out, you corrected it, and that made all the difference.
Made all the difference.
Yeah.
And correcting whatever nutrient imbalances. And I use a lot of whole food-based supplements. And by that, I mean beef liver capsules. Beef liver is such a rich source of zinc, rich source of iron, rich source of B12, all nutrients that the brain needs. But it's all the beauty of the beef liver is it's in a natural form. So it's not a supplement that's made in the lab, because individual nutrients don't behave by themselves. They interact in food. So to work together in food. So phenylalanine needs zinc to make dopamine. And also the beef liver has such an amazing amino acid profile. And I remember the first time I gave it to my son, how calming. He even said, Mom, this is, how calming it was for him. So there are a lot of companies now who have caught on and, developed different parts of the wild caught animals like the goat and the cows to help people and to nourish the body from deep within. And again, that has been part of what has helped us to, or my son, to become very successful, is optimal nutrition.
So speaking of that, are there any specific foods or supplements that you would recommend besides the beef liver?
The company that my go-to is Ancestral Supplements. And again, that's going to be the beef liver. But of course, there are other things that you can use if you are not if you're not animal-based, plant-based nutrients like turmeric, which is a great anti-inflammatory. I do like Microbiome Labs, for they have an excellent probiotic and prebiotic to help with the gut healing, as well as their prebiotic stimulates a strain of bacteria that's known to balance blood sugars. And they also have a great vitamin K that helps with brain function, athletic function, as well as mitochondrial function. Yeah, so I like Microbiome Labs. I love them. Ancestral Supplements, I love. I also like Metagenic.
And as with any supplements or just adding anything to your diet, please talk to your doctor and find somebody like you had to do, Janice. Find somebody that's on the same page as you, that can support you, that understands mental illness, that understands ADD, that understands nutritional deficiencies, that can guide you and getting the right vitamins and the right supplements. I mean, we're just making some suggestions on our part, but it's really important to make sure that the audience knows to share, to talk to a professional about your own specific needs, because these are all generalized recommendations. And so somebody that understands your specific needs and your specific situation can guide you in a better way. So knowing what you know now, what advice do you have for parents of young children struggling with behavior issues?
Take a look at the diet. Take a look at the diet. One of the things that, because I am in a couple of the mothers of ADHD groups, I always tell them the brain needs a healthy gut, a healthy pancreas, healthy adrenal glands, healthy liver to function properly, to function at optimal levels. So if the diet is not nourishing to those organs, glands, poor impulse control, hyperactivity often comes probably about 2 hours or so after a sugary meal. So take a look at the sugar in your child's diet. Make sure there's adequate protein. Make sure they're having something that has protein, fiber, and fat every 2 to 3 hours to support healthy blood sugar balance and brain function.
Great advice. Yes, I totally agree with all that. So where can people find you and connect with you and maybe reach out to you if they have questions or want to even work with you?
Okay. At the moment, I don't have my web pages in progress, but they can email me at jmilesnourishinghealthyminds@gmail.com.
Are you on social media at all?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. They can also contact me there. If they need to see me now, I do see people via telehealth, via HIPAA compliant electronic health record. So I can definitely see you now.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and being here and sharing your experience with helping your son overcome his ADD struggles and all that you've learned in the process. That was really valuable information.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure sharing.